This video is about not the SP404, but any gear where people claim the limitations force creativity or breed creativity. I think that's a joke. In my opinion, it's a joke. And I'm going to tell you why in this video. And this is not going to be a long video drawn out. I'm going to get right to the point and keep it simple. First of all, creative people don't need limitations to be creative. Period. If you're a creative person, you don't need limitations to be creative. That's a non creative person that needs a limitation. Because if you go back in the day and you give any of those guys that were creative back in the day that didn't have what we have today, software wise, they would still be doing the creative part. It was just who they were. They made a choice to be creative and they made music out of it. Now, they did the best they could with what they had at that time. They didn't have all the functions and the easy things that we have nowadays. But you can't discredit their creativity and saying that the machine made them creative. That's what you're saying when you say that a machine with less functions makes you more creative. That you weren't creative in the beginning. Basically, you needed a machine with less to give you more. What? That's crazy. I can take a guitar, it doesn't have sampling capabilities, and I can still play music and be creative with it. So you could say, well, that had even more or less limitations than a sampler, which you could sample guitars and sample different things and put it together. It doesn't mean that you're going to be more creative because the machine. The creativity comes from within you. So if you are a creative person, then make music. So here's a statement that I kind of came up with today as I thought about this whole thought process that people say, which I think is kind of ridiculous. And here's what it's like. And by the way, this is no discredit to anyone that is experiencing hardship, right? But I'm going to say this. And it's basically like it's one thing to go camping for a few days, it's another thing to camp for life, or AKA be even homeless, right? You could say. So, what do I mean by that? Well, to say that, well, going camping is limiting, yes, it is. It very much is a limiting thing. You go out there, some campsites don't even have restrooms. So you might have to dig a hole or you might have to find another way, right, to be able to do that, to take a shower, even, or whatever the case may be, or maybe you don't have hot water at that time. And by the way, I've experienced some of these things in real life, so I'm talking from experience and I'm just saying when you go camping for a few days, that's one thing. But eventually you want to go back to your day to day living in your bed where you sleep, like typically. So those things are different. So in other words, when you see a guy get a SP404 and he makes his music to a certain point, and then he has to jump in a DAW to finalize the the beat or finalize whatever the production is, because maybe he needs a couple other tools that this box don't offer, or the MPC or whatever you're using, OPXY or whatever. You gotta realize that you need that software to finish. Now, do you need it to make the basic sounds? No, because I mean, you can create in there. A creative person will find a way to create in the device. But to make it sound radio ready or really nice or good music that other people may thrive and want to listen to, that may be where you need it, like creating fades and things in a song or automation or things of that nature that may not be in every box. Like this box has some things, but some things is missing, right? That it needs to add to make the workflow. Now, there's workarounds that we have used. That's not a creative thing. It's just you've had to use workarounds because that's what you had, right? However, in a DAW, you don't have that as an issue. You don't have to worry about those issues because most of those features, if not, I'm going to say 9 out of 10 of the features are already there. There's very few workarounds that you have to worry about in a DAW. Most of them are there. You have to learn how to use them, but that's not a workaround, right? What I mean by workaround is you actually have to find a way to make something kind of do what you want it to do because it's not a feature that that particular machine offers. So that's not breeding creativity. Creativity was already there. You've already made the song. You're just looking for ways to do what you needed to do. And we do that in life all the time when we don't have certain ingredients for a recipe. We find a workaround or ways to do it. So if you want to give credit to someone finding workarounds, absolutely. There's plenty of people that do it, and I think they do it well, and that's great. But that does not mean that you're creative, that it's breeding creativity into you because you don't have something. Man, that's just learning how to work around and work with what you got. That's what that is. So, kudos to those that can do that too and that enjoy doing that. I do sometimes, but I find myself more gravitating towards being in the DAW just because I like the instruments better, I like the effects better, and I want to finish my music. And I find that I finish more music inside of a DAW. Again, it does not mean that you have to work that way. And the thing is too, like you can use a DAW, a DAW, in case I'm sounding weird to some people, a DAW, digital audio workstation, or whatever you want to call it. You can use that um, inside of your computer and really finish your music really easy. It's not a big deal. The problem is people feel like it doesn't make them creative. And I'm like, no, you're already creative. Stop discrediting yourself from being a creative person. You can say maybe it doesn't inspire me to do something, or maybe I'm not feeling inspired, but don't discredit yourself by saying you're not a creative person because the machine or the tool doesn't make you creative. That is not the case. Prince, I heard the story that Prince bought the guitar that everybody knows from Purple Rain, the main guitar, from a gas station or something for like $78. A $78 guitar back then probably could have been like maybe $600-700 maybe nowadays. So put that in perspective. If you know guitars or you know anything about instruments, what $500 or $600 guitar could you say is like, oh, this is top notch? But when you hear Prince music, do you ever say he did all that on that little $78 guitar? No, because the creativity wasn't the guitar, it was the player behind it, the person. He is creative, or in this case was because he's passed on. So, same thing with people like Michael Jackson, who um, I remember did some demos or whatever that were like him kind of like humming and making the beat with his mouth and other whatever he had to make the beat, but he didn't play anything. Yet, even the demo version sounded really good for a demo version. Was it because he lacked instruments or the ability to play an instrument? Absolutely not. It was because he is a creative or was a creative person. That's how he was able to do it. And that goes for any of these top musicians. I've seen, and I'm not going to say their name, this group, young cats, you would look at them and say, oh, they're not that creative if you didn't know. And I went to their show, and back then they were using, I think, a ADAT or whatever tape, and the tape broke at the show. So they literally, one of them beatboxed the song while the other one sung over it. And it was not the way you would typically want to hear that song. This was their main hit they were about to do, and it crashed. And yet they put on a show at that point that was so good. Spot on, just hit it. And it wasn't planned or anything. They just did it. They're creative and good and talented people. They did it. So again, do not take your creativity and say it's based on the machine you use, because it's not. It's based on you and your ability. So that's it. That's my rant for the day with regards to creativity. Um, Make sure that you use whatever you have. Don't feel like you need to buy the next thing, or what's everybody talking about right now, the MPC Live 3, which is basically, and I'm going to say it, a doll in the box. And the reason why I can say that, well, one, I've tried it already. And if you have a Live 2 and you buy that new pack they have, you basically have the same features. You just don't have the speed and the step sequencer and the MPE pads. So don't feel like you gotta go get the next thing. Oh man, without that, I'm not gonna be able to make music or create. Obviously, the internet's running slow apparently, so I can't even pull this up as fast as I normally would be able to. I've already talked about it. But you don't need this machine to make music. It's already in you, built into you to be creative. It's got some cool gadgets, features, colors, but that same OS is the same OS that you have on the older machines. I'm going to talk about that actually in the next video. So let's end it here. We'll get on the next one. I want to talk about um, these devices that put out new devices with the same OS. And this isn't about MPC. This is about a lot of companies that do this now. So I'll talk about it in the next video. All right.